In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate a very important concept in Java known as methods. So we've been working with methods all along so far, but here I'm going to just strictly focus on this particular concept and then how to apply it. So a method is basically a set of code which is referred to by name and can be called or invoked at any point within the program. And you can do so simply by utilizing the method's name. So in essence, method, think of it as a subprogram that acts on data and often returns a value. And each method has its own name, and you can have multiple methods within your program. The benefit of using methods is that they're really time savers, in that they allow for the repetition of sections of code without retyping the code every single time. And we've taken a look at certain built-in methods, and there are others that are user-defined. In other words, we can create our own methods as well. So let's jump right in. Let me in fact open up our Java Eclipse editor, and then I will show you line by line how to create a method and how to call it. So once I'm in the Eclipse editor, let me go ahead and simply right-click to create a new class. So I'm going to click on New here and then select the class, and this opens up the new Java class dialog box, and I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it test7 here and click finish. And what this does is it creates by default, of course, a public class. So let me get rid of this so we'd start from scratch. So the best way to figure out the way Java methods work is to see it in action. So for instance, let me go ahead and do public class and call it test7 and open our curly braces. And next I'm going to do the public static void main and our string array with the command line argument. Open our curly braces. Now we've been doing this before, but public static, for instance, are just special keywords that Java uses. And I mentioned that earlier in the previous lesson, that it uses these keywords primarily to determine the type of method. They must always be in lowercase letters. That's one of the rules. And void, for example, is called the return type of the method. So the void return type means that the method does not return anything, right? So it just doesn't give you any output. So once I have this, now let's have the program output something, right? So we need to give it a print command. So let me go ahead and simply do a system.out.print, and I'm just going to say method example, right? So since we're learning about methods, I'm just going to type the output as method example. Now what this is going to do is obviously do the output, right? And when I run this, it's simply going to say method example in the console window below. So this is really all to it regarding a method, but let's take a step forward. Let me introduce a new method. To do this, I'm going to have to write a code outside of the main method. So let this be our main method. So I'm going to go down outside the curly braces, right? Because not within the main method, outside the main method, I'm going to create a new one. So let me go ahead and do public static void, and then I'm just going to give my method a name. I'm going to call it say hello, and then open our curly braces. So all I've done so far is created another method called say hello. And the reason why I used the public static void is because this method is also not going to return anything. So really, so far, all we've done is we've created a new method called say hello. And also note that I've not used any parameters because we won't be needing any for the operations. This is just to show you the concept of the method itself. So next, let's have this method do something for us. So for instance, we can have this method print out something for us, like hello world, for example. So let me go ahead and do the system.out.print, and I'm going to say hello world. Perfect. So at this point, the output is going to be hello world for this particular method. The last thing we need to do is to use this new method. Now, how do you go about using this new method? All we have to do is just add this name of the method within the main method above. So for instance, if I were to go up here right under the method example, because note this is our main method, right? So within these two curly braces, this one and that one, this is our main method. So in fact, let me create a line here. Perfect. So we can differentiate between these two. So here's under the main method, we are simply going to call the method named sayHello. So in order to do this, we simply call this method sayHello and put a semicolon. And of course, we need our parentheses as well. Perfect. And notice Java automatically puts the method's name in italic. So what this means is that we're simply calling this method into our main method. So this line of code will make a method call and execute any code that is inside of that method. Because it returns nothing, we're not setting the variable equal to it. In other words, the only output that the sayHello method does is the hello world. So let me in fact go ahead and run this so you can actually see. So let me click on run, brings up the save and launch dialog box, Let me go ahead and click OK, and perfect. So we get an output called method example and then hello world. And of course we get the output in a single line. If you were to use the print in method, it would output in a different line. So for example, let me go ahead and just simply do the print in. And the Eclipse editor is nice about it because I can simply navigate to the little light bulb here and then change to print in. Same thing, I can navigate down here and change this to print in as well. And rerun the code, click OK, and notice in this instance I'm going to get my output in two different lines. So just a basic concept of using a method. Now that we have the concept of method down, let's do a real world example. Let's do test exercise. So let me go ahead and in fact create a new class here. So right click, choose new, click on class, and I'm going to call it method example or method exercise, or just say method 5 to make things easier. Click finish, and here I'm going to have the public class as method 5, which is fine. And then I'm going to do and specify the keywords, set some properties, public, static, void, main, and then our string array and the command line argument. Open up our curly braces. Now in this instance we are going to create a for loop. So I'm just going to go and say for instance int x equals 0, and then x is less than 5, and then increment x, and then open our curly braces. So the objective of this particular exercise that we'll use Java methods and have the output count from 1 to 5, and then we'll have Java do this 5 times. In other words, repeat this output 5 times. So this is the objective of this exercise. That's why I have for int x is equal to 0, and then x is less than 5, and I'm going to increment the output. So at this point, we're just counting from 1 to 5. Next, I'm going to create a new method. So outside this main method, right outside here, I'm going to create public, static, void, and then I'm going to give it a name, call it counter. And what this method is going to do is actually going to use the value of x as 1 instead of x as 0, which we used earlier in the main method. So I'm going to do a for loop in this instance, int, and here x is going to be 1 and x is less than or equal to 5, and then I'm going to have it increment. Open our curly braces, and then finally do a print. So system.out.print, and I'm printing the x. Get rid of this extra parentheses, it should go right after the plus sign. Now once I have this method called counter, I need to be able to call this method within my main method up here. So all I have to do is just say counter, set of parentheses and a semicolon. And this would tell Java that it's calling this method. Let me go ahead and fix the indentation here. So let's check our syntax, and we have our curly braces for our main method, and then of course we're missing another curly braces here, and this would validate our code because we have 1 and 2 open curly braces. Of course we need 2 to close it. And let me get rid of this. Perfect. So quick recap, we created a public class called method5, which is, by the way, as per our declaration rules, the same name. Then we used, and then we created a new method called counter, and then we called that counter method in our main method. So let's run this and see the output. So let me go ahead and click on run. Save and launch dialog box appears. Click OK. Perfect. So Java outputs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, essentially 5 different times, because that's what we're telling it to do in the for loop. So this way you can create methods, you can create multiple methods and then call them within your program. So I hope this helps. Practice, and let's move to the next lesson.